I stood in my bedroom doorway watching my son, Michael, and his wife, Patricia, whispering in my kitchen like I was already dead. They thought I couldn't hear them. But 73 years of life had taught me that the most important conversations happen in hushed tones. That's when I knew, really knew, that the facility they kept mentioning wasn't going to be the lovely retirement community they'd been selling me for the past 3 months. She's getting worse, Mike. Yesterday she asked me 3 times what day it was. I'd asked her once, because she'd changed my calendar while I was napping. My name is Charlotte Hayes, and I'm calling to you from my lanai in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where the ocean breeze reminds me every single day that I made the right choice. But before I get to the part where I'm sipping Mai Tais and watching dolphins, I need to tell you how I almost lost everything. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below. I love hearing from you beautiful souls out there. This story starts 6 months ago in my 3-bedroom house in Sacramento, California. The house my late husband Frank and I bought in 1982. The house where we raised 2 children. The house I'd kept immaculate even after Frank passed 4 years ago. I volunteered at the library twice a week, played bridge every Thursday, and never missed my doctor's appointments. But apparently that wasn't enough for Michael and Patricia. It started small. Michael began showing up unannounced, just checking in. Then Patricia started joining him, her eyes scanning my counters like a health inspector. I'd find my bills reorganized, my medication moved to a more convenient spot, my mail opened before I got to it. "We're just worried about you, Mom," Michael would say, his hand on my shoulder like I was fragile china. I wasn't fragile, I was careful. There's a difference. Then came the big meeting. Michael and Patricia sat me down at my own kitchen table with serious faces and pamphlets. Sunrise Gardens. The brochure read, showing silver-haired people playing checkers and doing watercolor paintings. It looked like a movie set. Too perfect, too cheerful. The kind of place where they hide the truth behind fresh-baked cookie smells. "It's a beautiful community, Mom. You'd have your own apartment, activities, people your own age." "I have people my own age," I said. "And I have this house." Patricia's smile tightened. "Charlotte, we really think this is best. You're alone here. What if something happens?" What if something happens? Those 4 words that adult children use to strip their parents of independence, wrapped up as concern but really meaning control. I told them I'd think about it. That was my first mistake. Not saying no immediately, because in their minds, "I'll think about it," translated to "start planning my move." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Frank's old recliner, the one I couldn't bring myself to get rid of, and I cried. Not because I was scared of getting older, but because my own son was treating me like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be respected. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened my computer and checked my bank account. Really checked it, not just glanced at the balance. Frank had been meticulous about finances, and he'd taught me well before the cancer took him. What I saw made my blood run cold. $3,000 gone. Transferred to an account I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I scrolled through the statements. It had been happening for 4 months, small amounts at first. 200 here, 300 there. Then larger chunks. $8,000 total moved without my knowledge or permission. I called the bank immediately. The representative, a young woman named Jennifer, pulled up my account. "Mrs. Hayes, these transfers were all authorized through your online banking. The account they went to is, let me see, listed as Michael Hayes, your son." "My son, my own son." "I didn't authorize any transfers," I said, my voice barely steady. Jennifer's tone shifted, becoming softer, more careful. "Mrs. Hayes, according to our records, your son was added as a joint account holder 6 months ago. He has full access to make transactions." I didn't remember signing anything. "But there had been that day when Michael brought over some paperwork from your insurance company, Mom. Just sign here and here." I'd been cooking dinner. I trusted him. "Can you remove him from the account?" "Of course. I can flag this for our fraud department if you'd like to." "No," I interrupted. I didn't want police involved. Not yet. Not my son. "Just remove him. Today." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for an hour staring at nothing. This wasn't about money. This was about betrayal. The kind that makes you question every hug, every "I love you, Mom," every concerned phone call. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own life. I found documents I'd supposedly signed, forms giving Michael power of attorney, healthcare proxy papers, even a preliminary contract with Sunrise Gardens. My signature on all of them, but I had no memory of signing any of it. They'd caught me during busy moments, distracted moments, trusting moments. In my office drawer, buried under old tax returns, I found a folder labeled Mom's Care Plan. Inside were printouts about memory care units, nursing homes, and a letter from Patricia to Michael that made me see everything clearly. Once we get her into Sunrise Gardens, we can sell the house. The market's good right now. Even after the facility costs, we're looking at a nice profit. And honestly, Mike, she's only going to get worse. Better to do this now, while we can still say it's her choice. My choice? They were going to take my house, my independence, my life, and call it my choice. I photographed everything with my phone, my hands steadier now, because I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. And anger, I was learning, could be sharpened into something useful. That night, I called my friend Doris. We'd known each other for 42 years, since our kids were in kindergarten together. She'd been through her own battle with her daughter trying to force her into assisted living. Doris had fought back and won. "Charlotte, you need a lawyer," she said immediately. "Not tomorrow. Today. I can't afford Bernard Morrison. He does elder law. Tell him I sent you. He'll see you." Bernard Morrison's office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service, which made me trust him more than if he'd been in some fancy high-rise. He was about 60 with kind eyes and a very unkind way of describing what was happening to me. "Mrs. Hayes, what you're describing is financial exploitation of an elderly person. It's a crime. Your son could face serious charges." "I don't want him arrested," I said quickly. "He's my son." Bernard leaned back in his chair studying me. "I understand, but you need to understand something too. This rarely stops on its own. Right now, it's $8,000 and a power of attorney you don't remember signing. Next month, it's your house being sold. The month after that, you're in a facility you didn't choose with no money and no way out." His words hit like a physical blow because I knew he was right. What are my options? He outlined them carefully. Revoke the power of attorney. File for an injunction to prevent any sale of my property. Report the financial exploitation to Adult Protective Services, possibly press charges. "There's another option," he added. "You could leave." "Leave?" "Sell the house yourself. On your terms. Move somewhere they can't control you. Take back your life before they take it from you." I thought about my house. Frank's house. The memories in every room. But Frank was gone and memories couldn't be stolen. Only the places that held them. If I did that, how would I mean, they'd try to stop me. Bernard smiled for the first time. "Mrs. Hayes, you're a competent adult. You can sell your property, move wherever you want, and spend your money however you please. The key is doing it before they can legally interfere." I left his office with homework: get a complete medical evaluation proving I was mentally competent, get the house appraised, change all my passwords, and secure my remaining accounts. And most importantly, don't tell Michael or Patricia anything. That last part was harder than you'd think. Michael called twice a day. Patricia dropped by with groceries I didn't need. They were circling closer, pushing harder about Sunrise Gardens. "They have an opening in June, Mom. We really should put down a deposit to hold it." June was 2 months away. "I'm still thinking about it," I said. The lie tasting bitter. "Well, don't think too long. Good spots fill up fast." After they left, I made a phone call. I'd been putting off to Dr. Rachel Chen, my physician of 12 years. I needed her to evaluate me officially and document that I was of sound mind because I was about to do something that would make Michael and Patricia absolutely certain I'd lost it. Dr. Chen's evaluation took 2 hours. Memory tests, cognitive assessments, physical examination. She was thorough, and when she finished, she looked at me with concern. "Charlotte, your cognitive function is completely normal. Better than normal for your age, actually. Why did you need this evaluation? Has someone suggested you're not confident?" I told her everything: the money, the documents, the facility. They were planning for me. Her expression darkened. "I see this more often than you'd think," she said quietly. "Adult children who convince themselves they're helping when they're really just helping themselves." She printed out the evaluation results and signed them. "You're as sharp as anyone I know. Don't let them tell you otherwise." Armed with that documentation, I met with a realtor. Doris recommended. Susan Park was 50, something efficient, and didn't waste time with small talk. "Your house will sell fast in this market. I can have it listed by next week if you want. I need it done quietly." I said my son can't know. Susan didn't even blink. "I've handled situations like this. We'll do private." Showings limit the online presence, but Charlotte, once it goes under contract, it's public record. You'll have maybe a week before he finds out. That's all I need that weekend. While Michael and Patricia thought I was at a church retreat, Susan showed the house to 7 potential buyers by Monday. I had 3 offers. I accepted the highest one, 20,000 over asking price, cash buyer 30-day close. I had 1 month to plan my escape. But here's what I hadn't told Bernard or Susan or even Doris. I had money. They didn't know about money. Frank had left me in an account at a different bank, one he'd set up years ago. He'd called it our adventure fund money. We'd saved for the travel we'd always planned but never got to do because of his illness. $147,000. I'd forgotten about it after Frank died, lost in grief, and the overwhelming task of settling his estate. But when I started investigating my finances there, it was untouched, unknown to Michael. My ticket to freedom. I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I booked a cruise. Not just any cruise, a world cruise, 117 days, departing from Fort Lauderdale in 60 days, circumnavigating the globe, 35 countries, 60 ports of call. The cost made me gasp. $78,000 for a balcony cabin. I clicked, confirm payment. Then I booked a one-way flight to Fort Lauderdale and a month-long Airbnb rental while I waited for the cruise to depart. Another $8,000. I was hemorrhaging money, and it felt absolutely glorious. My phone rang. Michael. Hey, Mom. Patricia and I want to take you to dinner tomorrow. We need to talk about Sunrise Gardens. They need an answer by the end of the week. That sounds lovely, sweetheart, I said, my cursor hovering over a tour description of Santorini. Tomorrow works perfectly, because tomorrow I was going to tell them exactly what they wanted to hear, and then I was going to disappear. The restaurant Michael chose was expensive, the kind of place he never took me to unless he wanted something. Patricia was already there when I arrived, wearing what I recognized as a new designer dress, bought with my money. Probably they ordered wine. I ordered iced tea. I needed to be sharp. Mom, we're so glad you agreed to dinner. Michael started using his gentle voice, the one that made me feel like a child. We know this transition is hard, but we really think Sunrise Gardens is the right choice. I smiled, set down my menu, looked him straight in the eye. You're absolutely right. Patricia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Michael blinked. Really, I've been thinking about it, and you're both right. The house is too much for me. I should be somewhere with people around, with activities and support. Every word was true, just not in the way they thought. I want to move forward with Sunrise Gardens. The relief on their faces was almost comical. Patricia actually reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Oh, Charlotte, I'm so proud of you. This is the right decision. You're going to love it there. When can we get started? I asked Michael. Pulled out his phone immediately. I'll call them tomorrow. Get the paperwork going. They said they could have you moved in within 3 weeks. Perfect, I said. That gives me time to pack, sort through things. I'll need to go through Frank's belongings, donate what I don't need. We can help with that, Patricia said quickly. Too quickly. No, I need to do this myself. It's important to me saying goodbye to the house properly, you know. They exchanged a glance but nodded. Of course, Mom, whatever you need. We finished dinner, talking about Sunrise Gardens, the activities they had, the dining options. I played the part perfectly, interested, resigned, accepting. When Michael paid the check with a credit card, I was fairly certain had my stolen money on it. I didn't even flinch. In the parking lot, Michael hugged me tight. I'm really proud of you, Mom. I know Dad would be too. The mention of Frank using him to justify this betrayal, that almost broke me, but I held firm. Thank you, sweetheart, for caring about me. I drove home in the dark, my hands gripping the wheel so hard they ached. The house looked different as I pulled into the driveway, not like a prison I was escaping, but like a shell. I was leaving behind the real home, the one with Frank's laughter and the kids, childhood chaos that was already gone. This was just a building. Inside, I sat at my computer and sent 3 emails, first to Susan, the realtor, proceed with the sale, close date confirmed for May 15th, second to Bernard, the lawyer, please prepare revocation of power of attorney documents. I'll sign them on May 10th, 3rd, to the cruise line. Please confirm my embarkation date of June 18th. I'll be there. Then I started packing, not for Sunrise Gardens, for the rest of my life. The next 3 weeks were a performance worthy of an Oscar. I played the role of a confused, compliant elderly woman preparing to move into assisted living. I let Patricia help me sort through belongings, watching her mentally catalog what she thought would be hers. I listened to Michael talk about selling the house eventually, while I sat on a signed contract that would close in 10 days. I donated clothes to Goodwill, the ones I wouldn't need for tropical climates. I sold furniture to a consignment shop, telling Michael and Patricia I was downsizing for the apartment at Sunrise. What I was really doing was liquidating assets and converting them to cash. I could control the hardest part, was watching them pretend to care. Patricia brought over color swatches for my new apartment. I thought maybe a nice sage green for the walls, very soothing. I smiled and nodded while thinking about the azure waters of the Greek islands I'd be seeing in 4 months. Michael stopped by with legal documents, more papers about the facility, about my care, about their access to my accounts, just in case I signed nothing. Let me read them over first, honey. I want to be sure I understand, Mom. We've been over this. These are standard. I know, I know. I just want to feel like I'm making informed decisions. You know, makes me feel more in control. He couldn't argue with that without revealing his true intentions, so he left the papers and promised to come back. He never got the chance. May 10th arrived Bernard's office 9:00 a.m. I signed the revocation of power of attorney. Every document giving Michael control was now legally void. They're going to be very angry, Bernard warned. I know they might try to challenge this claim. You're incompetent. I handed him Dr. Chen's evaluation. Let them try. May 15th, the house closing. Susan called me at 3 p.m. Charlotte, it's done. The money will be in your account tomorrow. Where should I forward your mail? I gave her the address of a mail forwarding service in Fort Lauderdale. Every trace of my new life was being routed away from Sacramento May 16th, moving day, but not to Sunrise Gardens. The moving company I'd hired arrived at 6 a.m. They packed the few belongings I was keeping, photo albums, Frank's watch, my grandmother's jewelry, some clothes, into boxes labeled for a storage unit in Florida. By noon, the house was empty except for the furniture that came with the sale. I walked through each room one last time. The kitchen, where I'd taught both kids to make spaghetti. The living room, where we'd opened Christmas presents for 30 years. The bedroom, where Frank had died in my arms. Thank you, I whispered to the empty walls. Then I locked the door and left the key under the mat for the new owners. I was at the airport when my phone started ringing. Michael? Patricia? Michael again. Text messages flooding in. Mom, where are you? The movers just showed up at Sunrise Gardens. They said you're not coming. Call me now. I turned off my phone, dropped it in a trash can at the gate, and boarded my flight to Fort Lauderdale with a burner phone in my purse that only Doris and Bernard had the number to. The Airbnb I'd rented in Fort Lauderdale was a small efficiency apartment 3 blocks from the beach. Nothing fancy, but mine. All mine. The first night, I sat on the tiny balcony listening to the ocean and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief so profound it hurt. No one was going to come check on me. No one was going to reorganize my cabinets. No one was going to steal from me while pretending it was for my own good. I'd left a letter, of course. I wasn't cruel. I'd mailed it to Michael the day before I left, timed so he'd receive it after I was gone. Dear Michael and Patricia, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not to Sunrise Gardens. Not to any facility. I've sold the house and moved away to live my life on my own terms. I know about the money you took. I know about the documents you had me sign without explaining them. I know about your plan to sell my house and profit from my care. I've revoked your power of attorney. You no longer have access to any of my accounts. If you try to find me or interfere with my life, I will press charges for financial exploitation. I don't hate you. I'm disappointed in you. There's a difference. Maybe someday we can repair this. But that day isn't today. Mom. My new phone rang on day 3. Doris. Charlotte, he called me. He's frantic. Wants to know where you are. What did you tell him? That you're safe, sound of mind, and none of his damn business. He threatened to call the police and report you missing. I'd anticipated this. He can try. I'm 73, not 13. And Bernard has documentation that I'm competent and left voluntarily. He's not taking this well. Patricia called too. She was crying, saying they were just trying to help you. They were trying to help themselves, I said flatly. Over the next month, the calls and messages to Doris continued. Angry, then pleading, then angry again. Michael hired a private investigator who got exactly nowhere because I'd covered my tracks well. Patricia tried to access my bank accounts and got locked out, triggering fraud alerts I'd set up. They filed a missing person report. The police did a welfare check. Bernard had prepared me for this. An officer called my burner phone, confirmed I was fine, and had left voluntarily, and that was the end of it. "Are you sure about the cruise?" Doris asked me during one of our calls. "That's a lot of money, Charlotte." "It's my money, and Frank would want me to use it. We always talked about seeing the world together. I'm just doing it a little later than we planned." The truth was, some nights I'd look at the cruise itinerary and panic. 117 days alone on a ship. What if I got sick? What if I hated it? What if I'd made a terrible mistake? But then I'd remember Patricia's face as she talked about the profit from selling my house. I'd remember Michael's hand on my shoulder, treating me like a burden. And I'd know I'd made the right choice. If you're still watching, would you do me a favor? Hit that subscribe button. I want to know my story is reaching people who understand. June 18th dawned clear and bright. I stood at Port Everglades watching my ship, the Ocean Voyager, looming like a floating city. 17 decks, 2,000 passengers, 117 days ahead of me. I was terrified. At the check-in desk, a young woman in a crisp uniform smiled at me. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Hayes. Traveling solo?" "Yes, first cruise." "Oh, how exciting. You're going to have the most amazing time. Your cabin is ready. Balcony on deck 7. Let me get someone to help with your luggage." My cabin was small, but perfect. A real bed, a desk, a balcony with 2 chairs and a view of the ocean. I unpacked slowly, hanging up the new clothes I'd bought, sundresses and comfortable shoes, nothing like the practical, boring outfits I'd worn in Sacramento. That first night at dinner, I was seated at a table for 8. Solo travelers, the maitre d' explained, were grouped together for those who wanted company. Charlotte Hayes. I introduced myself to the table. Helen Morrison, Boston, retired teacher. Robert Chen, San Francisco. Widower 2 years. Marie Dubois, Montreal. This is my third world cruise. We were all over 65, all traveling alone, all with stories. Over wine and Chilean sea bass, those stories started to emerge. Helen had left her daughter's house after being treated like a live-in babysitter. Robert's son had wanted to put him in memory care after he forgot one appointment. Marie's family had expected her to finance their lives indefinitely. "I sold my house and bought an RV," Helen said. "Drove around the country for a year. My daughter didn't speak to me for 6 months." "And now?" I asked. Helen smiled. "Now she calls every week and actually listens when I talk. Funny how respect returns when they can't control you anymore." Robert raised his glass. "To children who need to learn we're people, not projects." We drank to that. The first week at sea was an adjustment. The ship's routine, meals at set times, activities scheduled, announcements over loudspeakers. But it was a routine I'd chosen. Every morning, I'd sit on my balcony with coffee and watch the sunrise over the ocean, and I'd think, this is mine. This time, this peace, this freedom, all mine. We crossed the Atlantic to Portugal. I walked the streets of Lisbon with Helen, eating custard tarts and not worrying about what time I needed to be anywhere. In Barcelona, Robert and I toured Gaudi's Sagrada Familia, and I cried at the beauty of it. Not sad tears, but tears of gratitude that I'd lived long enough to see it. In Rome, I stood in the Sistine Chapel craning my neck to see Michelangelo's ceiling. And I thought about Michael and Patricia in Sacramento. Probably still angry, probably still convinced I was the one who was wrong. Maybe I was. Maybe good children don't abandon their parents, but maybe good parents don't steal from their children either. In Greece, something shifted. We docked at Santorini, that postcard-perfect island with white buildings and blue domes perched on cliffs above the Aegean Sea. I took the cable car up from the port with Marie. "Charlotte, you've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I looked at Marie, this woman I'd known for 6 weeks, but who felt like an old friend. "I keep waiting to regret this," I admitted. "The money, the cruise, leaving my son behind, but I don't. Does that make me a terrible mother?" Marie stopped walking and turned to face me, the brilliant blue ocean behind her. "Let me tell you something. I was married for 42 years to a man who told me every decision I made was wrong. After he died, my children did the same thing. They said I was too old to travel alone, too old to spend their inheritance, too old to make my own choices. You know what I finally realized? What? They didn't want a mother. They wanted a convenient grandmother-shaped ATM who'd babysit for free and leave them money when she died." You're not a terrible mother, Charlotte. You're finally being a good one. To yourself. That evening, I sat at a taverna overlooking the caldera, drinking wine and eating moussaka, while the sun set in impossible shades of pink and gold. A musician played bouzouki, and couples danced, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Joy, pure, uncomplicated joy. My phone, I'd gotten a new one that could make international calls, buzzed with an email from Bernard. Charlotte, Michael has hired an attorney. They're threatening to sue for return of the stolen money from the house sale. I need you to call me. I stared at that email for a long time, then I deleted it and ordered another glass of wine. The next day, I called Bernard from the ship. They're claiming you were incompetent when you sold the house, he explained, that you were coerced or confused. I have Dr. Chen's evaluation dated 2 weeks before the sale. I know, and they know that too. Which is why this is posturing. But Charlotte, they could make this expensive. Legal fees, depositions, court appearances. You might need to come back to California. I watched the Mediterranean slide past my balcony, endless and blue and free. How much would it cost to make them go away? Realistically, if you offered them $50,000, they'd probably take it. It's about the money, not principles. $50,000, almost a year of the cruise cost, but also my peace of mind. Counteroffer, I said, $25,000. Final offer. If they refuse, I'll see them in court and I'll bring documentation of every dollar Michael stole from my account. I'll press charges for financial exploitation. I'll make sure everyone in their social circle knows exactly what they did. Bernard was quiet for a moment. You've changed, Charlotte. No, I said. I've just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. 3 days later, while we were docked in Croatia, Bernard called back. They took the deal. $25,000, and they sign a release agreeing to no further legal action. They also agreed to no contact unless you initiate it. Send me the papers. I signed them in the ship's business center, scanned them back, and transferred the money. Then I went to the pool deck, ordered a Mai Tai, and watched us sail away from Dubrovnik. The cruise continued through the Suez Canal, down the Red Sea, across the Indian Ocean to India, Thailand, Vietnam. Each port was a revelation. In Mumbai, I ate street food that made my tongue burn and my heart sing. In Bangkok, I got a massage that nearly put me to sleep. In Singapore, I marveled at the gardens and the efficiency and the absolutely stunning modernity of it all. Helen, Robert, Marie, and I became inseparable. We called ourselves the Escape Committee. We'd compare notes on our families, the angry calls that had tapered off, the grudging acceptances, the slow rebuilding of relationships on new terms. Helen's daughter had apologized and was planning to visit her when she got back. Robert's son had finally accepted that his father was healthy, happy, and perfectly capable. Marie's family still didn't speak to her, but she'd made peace with it. Some people can't handle it when you stop being useful and start being happy, she said. As we crossed the Pacific heading toward Hawaii and then through the Panama Canal and back to Fort Lauderdale, I realized I'd changed. My skin was darker from the sun, my body was stronger from all the walking, my smile came easier. But more than that, I'd stopped apologizing for taking up space in the world. The last night on the ship, our table of 8 had a farewell dinner. We'd added 4 others over the months. Another widow, a retired nurse, a former accountant, and a woman who'd spent her life caring for her disabled sister and was now, at 71, traveling for the first time. What's next? Robert asked me. I'd been thinking about that. I'm going to stay in Fort Lauderdale. I've already put a deposit on a condo. Small, but it's mine, near the beach. And your son? I sent him an email last week, told him where I was, that I was safe, that I hoped we could rebuild our relationship someday, on equal terms. Did he respond? Not yet. Maybe he won't. But I meant what I said. I hope we can fix this, just not by me giving up everything I fought for. We disembarked in Fort Lauderdale on a bright October morning. I'd left in June as Charlotte Hayes, frightened and angry. I returned as Charlotte Hayes, free and whole. My condo overlooked the ocean. I furnished it simply. No clutter, no memories of the past, just space for the present. I joined a book club, started taking watercolor classes, volunteered at a women's shelter for domestic abuse survivors. One Tuesday in November, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Michael standing there. Older somehow, uncertain. Hi, Mom. Hello, Michael. Can we talk? I looked at my son. This man I'd raised, who'd hurt me, who tried to control me, who was now standing on my doorstep asking for a chance. Yes, I said. We can talk. Because here's what 117 days at sea had taught me. Holding on to anger is just another form of letting someone control you. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean going back to how things were. It means choosing peace over punishment. We sat on my lanai, that's what they call balconies here in Florida, drinking iced tea and watching the ocean. And slowly, carefully, we started to rebuild. Not as mother and child, but as two adults who'd both made mistakes and were trying to do better. Michael apologized. Really apologized, not the fake kind where they're sorry or upset. He'd started therapy, he said, realized that his fear of losing me had made him try to control me, and that his financial stress had made him rationalize stealing. "I've paid back every penny," he said, with interest. "I deposited it into your account last week. I'd seen it. $8,400. "Thank you," I said. We talked for 3 hours that first day. He came back the next week, then the next. Patricia came once, stiff and formal, but she came. We're not close. Maybe we never will be. But we're honest now, and that's better than the illusion of closeness built on control. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the cruise, if I regret wasting that money. I tell them this. I regret the years I spent thinking I had to be small to make others comfortable. I regret believing that being a good mother meant sacrificing everything, including my dignity. I regret letting fear make my decisions. But the cruise? The $78,000 I spent circumnavigating the globe while my son thought I was going to rot in a facility? Best money I ever spent. Because it wasn't about the ports or the food or even the friends I made. It was about proving to myself that at 73 years old, I was still the author of my own story. That I could write a new chapter that didn't include betrayal or control or playing small. I'm 74 now. I'm planning another trip, river cruise through Europe this time, just 8 weeks. Helen's coming with me. We're going in spring when the tulips bloom in Amsterdam. Michael knows about it. He asked if the money would be better saved for emergencies. I told him I'd lived through enough emergencies to know that the biggest one is reaching the end of your life with regrets and money still in the bank. My life isn't perfect. I still have hard days. I miss Frank every single day. Some mornings I wake up and wonder what I'm doing in Florida, so far from everything I knew. But then I walk down to the beach or call Helen to plan our next adventure, or sit on my lanai watching the dolphins play in the surf, and I remember this is what freedom feels like. This is what it means to choose yourself. And if that makes me selfish, if that makes me a bad mother, if that makes me ungrateful or difficult, or any of the other words people use to describe women who refuse to disappear quietly, well, I can live with that. I lived 73 years being what everyone else needed me to be. These next years, however many I have left, these are mine.